And we're live. Hi everyone, welcome back to our live panel mysteries. We are going to be talking about haunted dolls. This is our part 2, and we also have our special guest, Nick.
All the way from America. You have to bear with me tonight, guys, because I'm not very well.
Got man flu.
I will get there. I've got man flu. We'll get there. It'll be a great night. Again, feel free to jump in on the conversation, ask questions. When people start turning up, we'll start asking you to talk about it. It doesn't have to be doll related. It can be anything.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, please ask questions. We're not, and even if we can't answer it now, we can try and answer it next time.
Yeah.
We've also got our dolls tonight as well.
As always, our family. Oh shit! I really fell off my chair. Jesus. My chair's broke. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah, our family again. All of them are here.
Apart from Daisy.
Yeah.
I couldn't.
She doesn't stand up very well.
No.
But they are all here. We haven't had much activity with them over these few days.
But you have dropped a video, haven't you?
However, yeah, the last video I dropped on our channel, we had the REM pod go off.
For the first time.
Oh wow! Yeah, I don't know if you've seen that, Nick, but Amy was she went to sleep early, didn't you?
Yeah, because I was ill at the time.
You was ill. You gave it to me, didn't you? But yeah, she was not very well, so I thought I'd do a lone vigil with them, and I had the little REM pod going, and I thought I wouldn't get anything. I'm trying stuff and all this, and all of a sudden this REM pod lights up with the alarm.
You're popping your pants.
I don't know what to do. Jesus, it was brilliant. But
you asked it to stop and it stopped.
Yeah, because it was going off, and then I'm waiting for it to stop, and I said, "If that's you, can you move away now?" Instantly moves away, and
crazy.
Yeah,
I think they're getting a lot more active when we're asking for stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know about you, Nick, but for me, that when you get things like that, where the only way that can go off is if you touch it, and then when you say to it, "Can you move away now?" and then it stops, that's proof to me. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I think it's a lot similar to even just when it comes to simple investigations, these tools won't activate unless you have your hand on it or something. But if it's reacting to whatever could be possibly nearby, especially if it's in an area that's doesn't have a lot of electricity going through, it just happens. Let's say if it's just in the middle of a table and it's still going off, that makes you wonder, what exactly is causing that to go off? Because that's impossible for any because it's in an area, there's no electricity. It's kind of the same thing with a lot of these old dolls.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this is why because I was a skeptic, and I think that's still with me slightly, that I like using these devices where, like you say, the only way that can go off is if you're physically touching it. If something physical has to be there. It's a scientific instrument. And it doesn't lie. It can't lie, and I think for me that's.
I mean, obviously, still trying to debunk it as best you can, but there's only so far you can try and debunk something before then you're like, well, it happened. You can't really dispute it. So.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what I find fascinating, that you try and debunk it, and you try and wrap your head around what's going on, and it's almost impossible. I think it's fantastic. Just gonna drop it.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, a lot of times when we go on investigations, even though we haven't really done a lot of dolls, we always try to debunk everything first before we decide, okay, there's something unusual going on with this, because we're always those kind of investigators that in a lot of cases, there's a lot of nooks and crannies that could be the cause of what possibly maybe paranormal activity. So we always check on these areas first before we begin, whether it's an EVP session or a REM pod session or whatever.
Yeah,
definitely. And then I think that's the best way to do it. And I like to Just give me 2 seconds. Let me just finish that. I like going to like these locations, like you say, and scary guy. How you doing? You're right.
Hiya.
Yeah, I like going to these places and not knowing its history. I like not knowing what's going on there. I like to be a total blank canvas so that
I decided to change the background for this.
That's a lot more creepy than ours.
that freaked me out a little bit then.
It kind of fits with the theme, doesn't it?
Definitely
That's brilliant, yeah. You're putting us to shame now, you are. Yeah, I mean, I like not knowing, because then you say you can do your tests and stuff, and then you get the logical explanations out the way first, and then anything after that is totally unexplainable. It is paranormal, isn't it? As such. But yeah,
I was going to ask you, is there anywhere else you'd recommend in America to go for a ghost hunt? I know obviously one of them on your bucket list is the Winchester.
Winchester's one of them. Another good one, and I probably have said this before, like on John's show, but one of my favorite locations that it's actually been 10 years since I've been to this location. I've been wanting to go back ever since, which is Waverly Hill Sanatorium in Louisville, Kentucky. That was a place that didn't disappoint me. I mean, I know a lot of changes have gone on with the place since I was there back in 2010, but that is almost like, if you're planning on becoming like a full 100% ghost hunter, especially here in the U.S. or even from other countries, if you ever come to the U.S., Waverly is definitely a location to check out. Of course, there's a price, if you decide to stay the whole night, but it's usually not expensive. I think the last time I heard it, I think it was only about $100. I think that was 10 years ago, though. I don't know if the price has changed.
Yeah.
But in other words, that's one of my favorite locations.
So I don't know about over there, but over here we have to go with like a group, an actual company, to be able to visit these locations. Is it the same with you, or can you hire out like privately yourselves?
It depends on the location. Like this one again for Waverly, when we went 10 years ago, there were different groups that were there. Now I wasn't part of one myself at that time. I mean, I was already an investigator, but for the most part, it was just my dad and I, and we just tagged along with some of the investigators. They split up the groups, but perhaps the most amazing thing was that by about 1 or 2 a.m. that night, a lot of the other investigators decided to call it a night and left, pretty much leaving my dad and I and the tour guides alone in this building. I mean, it was almost like every paranormal investigator's dream to have a place like this all for yourself. I mean, it was just like, it was almost like it's as if this was a setup for me. And at that time, I was only 17 years old. So especially at that age, I remember thinking, geez, this has got to be better than getting, I think this is going to get better than getting Christmas presents. It came early we went down. It was in August though that we went. So only issue is if you go during the summer, I would definitely say dress lightly, because there's no AC in that place, and it was humid and it was hot in that building, but it was totally worth it.
We have the opposite effect here.
Yeah, we get about a week in the summer where it's hot. It's not that hot.
Yeah.
Every other time,
I could say the same.
We can have sleepovers. I know you can 30 East Drive. You can sleep over, and then they will just leave you in the building with the keys.
Yeah, but of course, because of all this COVID stuff, all that's been knocked on the head. But
we are going in February.
Yeah, we're going places in February, but with us, it's so difficult here to go and visit places. There's loads of places, obviously, with Britain, its history's massive, and
you can hire it out, but it's expensive.
It's so expensive, and this is why these companies that run these ghost hunts charge so much, because it's so expensive to hire out, and to do it yourself, you've got to be wealthy.
You have to have so many people as well.
Yeah, a lot of them have stipulations like you need so many people to go there and all this, and it's very, very hard here to actually visit places. I know Scaredy Cat, he goes around the corner to the sanatorium, and and you can visit at any time almost, and that's brilliant to have that on your doorstep.
You've got to travel where we are.
Yeah, I mean, we have places. I mean,
we've got a lot of history.
We've got a lot of history. I mean, we've got churches and stuff, and there's a lot of abandoned places, but it's getting harder and harder, I think, in our time in Britain to visit these places, because a lot of them are either being knocked down.
That's the thing. There's asylums there in London.
Yeah,
and
that's
got
gone.
knocked down.
That's now got housing on top of it.
Yeah.
It's either knocked down, it's renovated, or it's just taken over privately, and they don't want any paranormal people to do with it. But I think without us as investigators visiting these places and paying to see it, they will disappear.
Yeah, I just saw something like that earlier today. There was a what was that? I told you guys about it before. Mike Rickseger, the guy who does Haunted Road Media, he just posted a photograph. I don't know if this was occurring like right now as we speak, or if this was a couple of days ago, but there was, I think, like an old hospital. He lives in Ohio now, so I think it was out in the town of Lorain, Ohio. And this was like an old abandoned hospital. It's had a few investigations, and tragically they tore it down. I mean, it's happening right now, or it happened a few days ago. And the hardest part was, especially for Mike, he was known to have done investigations at this location, and it's gone. I mean, I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, it is a shame.
Well, I was worried about the Winchester, because obviously there was rumours about that being knocked down, but now they've turned that, obviously, like you said before, into a hotel, which is really lucky.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's saved it, really, hasn't it? I mean,
I think what a bit of history, though, to get rid of.
That's it. It's history, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, like we have castles and stuff like that here as well, but
we do our best to obviously protect them.
Yeah. But it's like us knocking one of them down and building housing on it.
Yeah.
Then that history's centuries old.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? If you got rid of that, what's the point in having it? All you have it is in books, and you'll never be able to.
That's we've had a few locations here in the state of Illinois too over the years that have been knocked down. We had and this was one that really broke my heart. It was actually a maximum security prison we have here that's called Menard Correctional Center, that's located down in Chester, Illinois. Prior to 1970, it was called, in other words, Southern Illinois Penitentiary. And the prison is still in operation. There's no signs of it closing anytime soon, but it was a historic prison. It was actually the second oldest operating prison in the state of Illinois. It originally opened up back in March of 1878, and just 2 years ago, on the 140th anniversary of that place, they tore the administration building down, which I couldn't believe it, because even though it's still an active prison, I literally thought that the least they could have done with this place was, I mean, I get it, that's an actual, they're still operating as a maximum, because it's also the largest maximum security prison here in the state of Illinois. Despite that, they at least could have, put a fence around the administration building and could have opened it up as a museum, because I found out prior to demolition, nobody was really using the administration building. So they could have at least put a fence around it. And I'm sure the people down in Chester are still devastated, because this prison was also built through the use of inmate labor. Inmates built this prison back in its days. So it's like you're knocking down stuff that people that, yes, they were convicted of crimes, but they put a lot of hard work at putting this place together.
Yeah, and this is it. It's almost like that it wants to be forgotten. And I understand there's places that, because of its bad history, it needs to be forgotten, and that the bad times need, but then it needs to be also remembered so that these things aren't repeated as such. Like in Germany, you've got the concentration camps, like Auschwitz, things like that. Just imagine like leveling Auschwitz and building housing on it.
In my opinion,
it'd be a tragedy. Like
I feel like things like that should be left alone. They shouldn't be visited, because you're disturbing where they died. That's my opinion on it anyway. I feel like they need to just be left to rest. But yeah,
That's literally.
There's one part in there that I really want to visit it. There's one part in there where one of the chambers, they've actually put a glass floor above the original floor, and below the glass floor is all the original shoes from the inmates. There's millions.
See, I think
millions. And I don't want to go for like, oh, it's Auschwitz and all this, like excited.
it's remembrance, I suppose.
It's the remembrance to actually physically see what happened. It's almost like a memorial, and it's almost like I want to go there to almost pay my respect to these people that lost their lives, sort of thing.
Gosh, we went
yeah, I mean, if people were asking me, like, people ask me, like, you know, if Auschwitz would be a place I ever investigate. Honestly, I don't really know how I'd answer. I mean, definitely, I'd be the same way as you. You know, I wouldn't be excited going to Auschwitz. It would probably be one of the few locations that, not necessarily, you know, I'd be afraid to go check out, but it would be a kind of a location hesitant, at least, because of you know the terrible atrocities that occurred. In fact, we actually have, it's only about 20 minutes from where I live, we have a Holocaust Museum, which is right on the edges of Chicago. And they actually have, I've been inside it. It was a bizarre feeling. We have one of the actual box cars that they use to transfer, you know, prisoners in. And I mean, it's not a replica or anything. It's the real thing. And you could actually walk inside. There's a walkway that allows you to go inside this box car. It's got to be the most depressing feeling I think I've ever felt in that box car. I mean, I'm not saying I felt like, you know, I mean, I'm sure there may have been some activity, but you could, even without the activity, you could just feel the energy from that particular box car. I'm thinking,
and that's it. It's the energy. I want to almost feel that, like to go there and
you've put yourself in their shoes.
Yeah, because you read about it and you watch films on it and stuff, and I don't think it does it justice then to actually visit it and realize this was real. This actually happened, and it's
I'd love
crazy.
to go and see Chernobyl. I know obviously it's dangerous still,
Chernobyl.
but that's amazing.
Before we I'll just quickly drop Scaredy Cat's comment on here. There's also haunted roads to visit. Actually a good thing.
Oh, Clinton Road. I've heard that. I've never been there. In fact, I haven't even been to New Jersey yet, but I've heard of Clinton Road. That, along with another road called Shades of Death Road, which is also not too far, which is also in New Jersey. Those are regarded as, I think, two of the most haunted roads in the U.S. I mean, there's just a lot of paranormal sightings that occur on that street. I mean, on both those roads. But those are two other ones on the list that I want to check out.
Yeah, certainly haunted roads. Anyway, we're going off on a bit of a tangent, as we always do. But so it is Haunted Dolls Part 2. Now, one of the things we didn't quite get onto the other night was, of course, the very infamous, should I say, the Haunted Doll Island.
Which I think Ghost Adventures have been to. I think Most Haunted went to it. And the Fact or Faked,
Fact or Faked,
they went to it as well. So quite a few people have been.
What have you heard about, or what are your thoughts on Doll Island then?
So first off, I haven't really seen any of the shows of the investigations that have taken place at the Island of the Dolls, but I've heard of the stories about it. And, you know, my view is that because people say when they're on this doll, like they hear the dolls supposedly laughing or crying. I mean, they said it all started with, I think it was an old man or somebody who lived on the island, and he found a girl that drowned. It happened to be near the island.
Don Julian Santana Barrera, if I've got that right.
That's his name. Yeah. He said he found a dead girl, and then right afterwards there was a doll that floated nearby, and then there were several more. The way I see it is that again, it's hard for me to figure out exactly if some of these, you know, items could actually be considered alive. But in my personal opinion, I think it's maybe just this girl that may have died that may be inhabiting a lot of these dolls. Because I know that there are times where sometimes spirits do have the ability to be at two places at once. So if she has some kind of ability to actually, you know, possess all different dolls at the same time. That's beyond me, but that's not to say that she doesn't do that. But you also have to wonder where all these dolls. I mean, we understand that these dolls started showing up shortly after she died, but we really don't know where these dolls exactly came from.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what I've
That's a picture of the dolls.
yeah, there's actually thousands, and what I've done some research on it, and apparently this Don Julian, say he was a caretaker at the island, and he, like you said, he did apparently found a drowned girl there. Now, the locals that live there and who have lived there at the same time that he was there have all the way up to this point disputed the fact that there was ever a drowned girl.
Yeah, they think it's just it's being played on almost.
Yeah, they almost think because this guy was quite a lonely man, they almost believe that in his solitary, he's almost developed this story in his own life, which would be a shame if he has. But yes, they say what I've read, and I don't know, but what the story goes is like he found this girl, and then he found a doll in the river after finding the girl. Now he believes that this doll belonged to the girl, and he put this doll up in the tree to almost remember her, like a memorial. And apparently this girl's spirit would not leave him alone, so he kept on adding dolls to try and appease her spirit.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that has, since he's passed, it's almost got to the point now visitors bring their own dolls, and they're adding their own dolls to the island. It's almost becoming like a dumping ground for
Dolls.
old dolls, which is a shame because it should be left. It should be left how he left it, sort of thing. Which I think. But what you say about the laughing dolls? I don't know if anybody's watched it. But one of the Ghost Adventures programs that they did on there. They're in one of these buildings, and you hear a doll laughing, almost like or giggling, like a giggling doll.
Yeah.
And they turn around, and it's going for ages, and they find the one that's actually giggling. It's a real old doll hung on the wall, and of course they check it to make sure there's nothing.
It couldn't actually laugh though, could it?
No, the battery pack that was in it has been cut out. The wires were cut, so there was nothing there, and there was nothing around it. And
no, it was crazy. Like, it shouldn't have been able to do that at all.
I mean, if it's been faked, then that's obviously
Not
it should be happening. But if it is real, then
is that the spirit of the girl?
Is that the spirit of the girl? Is it
the spirit of the girl or something else? Because you never know, again, where some of these dolls may have came from. So, like I said earlier, but the other thing you also have to wonder if there's, depending on whatever could be controlling these dolls. Again, not knowing where a lot of these dolls' origins come from. There's always that possibility that you're not only dealing with one entity, there actually could be multiple entities, surrounding these particular dolls. So either the way I see it is that either they stay attached to the doll that they grew up with, or, was once owned by them, whatever the case is, or they have the ability to just go from one doll to another, because now there's a whole collection for them. In life, they may have only had one doll in their life. To them, now it's like, like a children's toy shop to them.
Yeah. I agree with you then. I do think that maybe like some of the spirits, like the little girl, they could choose which dolls they're possessing, and like I say, the more that are there, it's like their playground, like a toy shop, and they might not see the dolls how we do, where they're all decaying and falling apart. Being in the spirit realm, they might see them as just like the real toy, the real thing.
Yeah.
And I suppose if you are in the spirit world and that's all you've got, then why not? I mean, if you was a kiddie and you did pass away, you would be attached to these toys, wouldn't you? I mean, you don't know any different.
He was either a very lonely, sad man that needed comfort, and a doll was kind of his comfort almost. Because they do have patients that've got dementia. They give dolls to them, and they actually find it very comforting. They almost go back to their nature.
Like a baby, isn't it?
Yeah. Or he generally did find a girl with a doll, and it's led from there.
Yeah. I mean, I remember now that the canal there is actually very famous for actually having bodies dumped in it. Unfortunately, it's quite common.
Well, they do in India, don't they?
Yeah, but these bodies, a lot of them are either from drug related or ritual related. I don't know so much as today, but in the past, it used to happen a lot with around there. These certain groups would form rituals and obviously sacrifices, unfortunately, and dump these bodies in the river. So, I mean, he could have found the body, this little girl, but then where is the little girl now? Why did he not bury her on the island? I mean, that's what I would question. Why is there no?
That's the other thing too. Like you see all these different stories, and although he finds supposedly the girl, the body of this girl, it's never explained exactly, what he did with the body, other than that he started hanging these dolls as mementos to remember this girl. But you never actually, that's something I never even thought about, is that they never talk about where could she be buried.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, surely if you're
there's going to be a body, there's going to be there's got to be police records, because you would have to have called the authorities.
You find a body. I don't know what their authorities are like out there, but surely if you find a body, the first thing you do is you report it to the police, and you get the body identified so that their family can be informed you found a body. Surely. I
mean, there's not a grave on the island, is there?
Not what I know of. No, I've heard there's no graves on the islands at all.
Right. Not to mention that. How do you not know that there could be, descendants, family members of this particular individual that, they may have possibly either now or, well, maybe not now, but maybe years ago or even decades ago, there may have once been a girl in their family that must have went missing. And if they uncovered the bones, like let's say, for example, of this girl, that would finally, that could finally come to the conclusion saying, oh, we've identified it and it belongs, we could finally figure out who it is. It belongs to this family. What happened to her? Or even if they can't figure out what was the cause of her death, like her, exact death, at least they found her remains.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think there does need to be an investigation on the island as such to find out if there is any burials there, because it, like I say, it would put it to bed that it is either a myth or it is real. I think. I mean, unless.
Sorry, that's coming from my side. There were police cars. I have the windows open.
I'm going mad. I'm looking around thinking, what the hell?
I gotta say, I just loved your reaction. That was awesome. Oh my god, dude, that just made my day.
Yeah, I thought it was that dolly that's someone at our window. Oh, Jesus. Yeah, I mean, it needs to be sorted out. It needs to be found out if it's a hoax or not. Hopefully, it's not a hoax, but I mean, it is unusual that there's that many dolls, and then from the investigations that have happened there has been a lot of paranormal evidence, a lot. So
well, that's the other thing too. Again, and this, I mean, not to go partially off topic, but that's the case with a lot of these locations too. Is that a lot of times there's always that belief that there's a lot of that there's corpses, burial, unmarked burial grounds. In fact, we were checking out this place. This was a couple of years ago. We went to a place called the Roth House, which is down in Roth, Illinois. That's where it's near Watsika, Illinois. That's where supposedly the Watsika Wonder occurred back in the 1870s. And we believe that there were still a few members of the Roth family that were still buried on the site. And the guy who owns it now, he at one point showed us what looked like possibly what might have been a femur bone. Like, and he didn't just, dig it up for curiosity. He just happened to find it, while he was, cleaning up the yards. And I think he said he's gotten the police to check it out, but they haven't really done any excavations. But that once again kind of draws back to what we're talking about, is that, when it comes to locations like that, you just wonder, how do you not know you could be, wherever you're walking could be on an unmarked grave?
Yeah, that is true. Yeah.
I was just thinking, obviously, I was saying about the fact that he should have called the authorities or whatever, and there would have been a body and proof. But what about the catacombs? There's loads of bones in there that they obviously couldn't identify every single body that's in there.
Yeah. I mean,
and they just got locked away. So that,
there is a lot that I do think there is a lot of unfortunate, like, lost burials. That can cause these hauntings. Maybe the island could be full of burials for all we don't know. I mean, there could be hundreds of people buried on there. That could have been a graveyard at some point in history.
Your history is native Indians.
Yeah, native Indians could have used that island at one point. We don't know. And that also comes back to, again, like I say, a bit off topic, but like if you go over to like the World War II battlefields in France and Germany, that thousands and hundreds of thousands of men were just disappeared. They were buried in the mud and they've never been found. Their bodies are still there to this day, and they still uncover bodies. And I think that has a big part in hauntings, because surely your soul's not at rest if you've almost been forgotten. And I think that you're desperately trying to tell people that you're still here, but this is where my body is.
Yeah.
Almost like trying to get, because if
unfinished business.
Yeah, I mean, if you're out there like in World War II, and the last letter you got from your wife or whatever, and then minutes later your body disappeared, surely your desperation would be to inform your wife that I am gone, because she knows nothing.
That's kind of we actually have something like that here in downtown Chicago itself, believe it or not. Most, especially outside, residents don't know this. We have a part of Chicago, what is now called Lincoln Park. There used to be, and this was even further back during the American Civil War. There was a camp that used to be around that area that was called Camp Douglas. It was a prisoners of war camp. That was where a lot of the Southern, Confederate soldiers were captured. And a few of there were also a few slaves. I'm not sure. Well, I don't know if they were slaves, but it was a few African American men that were also put into into this Confederate, not Confederate, this POW, this prison. And there was at least six of them. From what I've heard, is that 3 of them were eventually released. 2 of them, nobody knows what happened to them, and at least 1 died. But it wasn't really them that was really the problem. It was all the prisoners that they kept. And again, it's been such a while since I've heard this story, but they were held in captivity for well over a good portion of the Civil War. And then right after the war finally ended in 1865, a lot of these, prisoners eventually died from either exposure or diseases, because, prisons, especially back then, were not as, well controlled as they are now. I mean, it was very unsanitary conditions. And a lot of these soldiers were eventually just buried. Literally, it's kind of a little bit disturbing too, right under where kids play today. Because like I said, it's called Lincoln Park. You got people who walk down the street with their dogs, with their kids. They have a playground in that area. And I think to this day, they still uncover, every once in a while, there's always a bone that they happen to find out. In my personal opinion, as someone who does a lot of history, it is probably Chicago's darkest secret that we have here. And that's something most people don't seem to know about. It wasn't up till probably about 2013. A book was finally written about it. Before that, nobody knew. Not too many people knew about it.
Wow, I've never heard of that. Definitely not.
No,
that's shocking, really. I mean, it's that's that's mad. Yeah. Now you got something you want to?
Right. So a little bit. So I mentioned last time Elmo as a laugh. Have you ever heard of the Cabbage Patch Kids?
Cabbage Patch Dolls, yeah.
Yeah, I think I've heard of those. It's been a number of years since I have heard of those. Yeah, I remember those.
Yeah,
I always thought they were creepy in the first place.
Well,
yeah, they look weird, don't they?
A lot of people have said that, to be honest. So they were actually basically invented by a guy called Xavier Roberts. Have I said that right? Yeah. In the 1983, around about that time. Now, supposedly they're cursed. So I don't know how far you would go with that. But a lot of kids were getting injuries to their hands, and they were also getting their hair caught in the doll nails. And a lot of parents were saying, "Oh, I'm never going to buy this ever again. I'm just going to bin it." But there was a massive craze at the time because of this person that created them and bought them. But to be honest, they probably just bought the doll for the wrong age child, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of history on it. They just supposedly they came out and they told they're cursed, and that was it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's kind of that's kind of a little bit hard for me to exactly. I mean, it's partially difficult for me to really come up with something for that. But I would agree with you, Amy, that perhaps maybe they just happen to give these dolls to kids at the wrong age, because especially if you got a kid who's only maybe like 2 or 3 years old and they have not really learned how to really grab or use dolls the right way to play with them or whatever. They're always going to try to come up with their own sources. In some of those cases, it can be quite dangerous. I mean, I've been told it's been quite dangerous for some of the ways that they use some of these toys.
Yeah.
So there's that. But as for the curse, as the curse side of it, I mean, unless we start seeing like more kids, like let's say over age 5, saying that, okay, there's bizarre things going on with these dolls, then that would possibly raise the suspicion. I mean, I haven't heard too much about it, but I'll definitely be on the lookout for it. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with you there as well. I think that to say it's cursed
It's a big statement.
It's a huge statement. I mean, for someone to be cursed, there's got to be like a lot of proof that these events are continuously happening. And I again, it could be for publicity or whatever, but I do think that maybe the dolls are either poorly made, which caused these kids to have problems with them, or which won't be surprised, or it's just a coincidence that these things get happening to these young kids. I mean, it's difficult. I definitely you could say it's cursed.
Right.
Not for sure.
All right, I'll give you another one then. Do you remember the Furbies?
Oh yeah, I remember. We used to have one of those back in the 90s. Yep, I remember those. I've heard they've been making a comeback actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, they're starting to get popular again for some reason. I haven't seen too many of them, but apparently I don't know if it's either because of nostalgia or whatever the case is, but they're starting to make a comeback for some reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have ours anymore. Ours disappeared like 20 years ago. Believe it or not, we actually had a fire at our house over almost 20 years ago. We were all fine, but we lost several of our possessions, and that was probably one of them.
Yeah, bloody hell, mate.
So basically what they said was in the 1950s, the Furby represented one of the first attempts at domestic AI mass production. So it was in its prime back then. And because of the technology that was in it, depending on what because you could program supposedly sentences into these Furbies, very similar to the Elmo. And it was actually coming out with some really sketchy things. It was saying some very demonic. It was laughing almost demonically. Yeah. Now, is that because someone's created one to do that, or is it just being messed up in the production? Maybe.
Yeah, I'd say as well that it's probably high chance that somebody's put this software into a few of them.
Yeah.
Just either for whatever. I mean, because technology back then was very simple, and most people could get their hands on it and do it, sort of thing.
It was banned in 1999 because it was too. It was a potential of because the technology that was in it. It was too dangerous, supposedly. I mean, a Furby.
Yeah.
How dangerous can a Furby?
Yeah. That's crazy.
Well, I can start off with the one that we had back in our days. As far as I remember, we didn't have any weird, suspicious, speeches coming from it. It was basically just like anybody else's back then. But that's all new for me. It could be, again, just maybe the software, because you have to remember, the fact that we also were one of those kids that got those when they were really at their highest popularity back then. You know, most people didn't really have a lot. You know, it was kind of almost like a turn of a new century at that time, because there really had never been toys made like that, really, especially with a lot of that type of dialogue. I mean, if you look at toys from, you know, prior to the 1990s, if you look back, even all the way far back to the early 1950s, late 1940s, a lot of those toys usually only had one line, maybe two or three, but usually just one, and that was it. The fact that this was something that had the ability to speak more than 1 to 3, you know, lines, you know, that was pretty brand new, you know, in those days. You know, nowadays you could put 100 lines in toys, because now it's everywhere. But back then, it was brand new at the time.
Yeah.
I mean, Shane Dawson, obviously, he started looking at, obviously, people being able to impersonate other people, whereas you go on this database on the computer, you say a load of sentences, and then it can actually mimic your voice. That's how dangerous technology is now.
And like Nick said, and these things can say hundreds of things, and like back then, for it to just say one sentence was like a miracle. This thing can talk to you and all this, and
I couldn't help but think of, we got the Alexa nowadays.
Yeah, exactly that. We've got one sat downstairs right now. Like,
my laptop has Alexa on, and we got one downstairs too. So we got 2 of them.
Yeah.
Phones, I always find as well really weird is that I think your phone's listening to you as well, because watch this thing on YouTube, and this is of this couple, and they were saying nothing but cat food. And I know this is off topic, but they were saying cat food this, and all of a sudden they get adverts for cat food.
Yeah.
And they don't have a cat at all.
This is a little bit suspicious.
Wow.
Another toy.
You know, I'm sure it probably won't be long before we start hearing about urban legends and stories of Alexas. I mean, they've only been around for a couple of years. I would probably guarantee in the next 10 years from now, there's going to be some kind of legend involving the Alexa.
Oh, definitely.
But
definitely.
Did you not remember so far, though, the Alexa, the horrible cackling laugh that it did? It did that for a while.
There was some.
Oh, yeah, I heard about that.
They got hacked, yeah.
I mean, ours sometimes, I don't know about yours, but ours will sometimes, we're sat there in silence, and it turns its blue light on, makes that noise, like it's listening. And then it says something like, I can't find that. Like, I didn't even say anything.
Yeah.
Right. There's even been actually, you know what? Now that I'm thinking about it, there actually has been a story like not with the Alexa itself, but based on it. It's again, I was telling you guys this last week. I've been reading all these, you know, these scary stories books. There's another one out there that's called the Nightmare Society books, and the Nightmare Society books actually are the first ones that are intended for a more mature audience, because they're more graphic. There's, of course, more adult language. I mean, you actually have to be either, I think it's age 14 and over to get one of those books. That's to show that they're not really made for a lot of kids. But the first story in the book, I can't remember what it was called, but it really was focused on a machine like that. And it's like saying all these bizarre things, and the guy's telling him, saying, I didn't say that yet. It just continues doing these strange things. And, oh man, it's been a while since I've read it, but something bad happens to him. that's all I can really think of.
Yeah. Which one do you want to talk about next?
I'm just gonna go on to we're on about another 20 minutes, but I was gonna say about I didn't know this, but about Egyptian dolls. They were called, I had them here, Shabti dolls. Now, from what it says here, Shabti dolls were actually made out of wax or sewn at times, and they were buried with the mummies in Egyptian times. Now, what it says here is that these dolls would then have like a spell inscribed on them. So in your afterlife, which is what they were huge believers in, these dolls, when called upon by what's his name, the afterlife god.
I think I know who you're talking. I'm actually looking it up too, because I'm surprised I haven't heard of these.
So anyway, when this God would call on you to do work for him, these Shabti dolls were supposed to then come to life in the afterlife and perform these tasks for you, which I've never even heard of. And apparently, even some of them, there was wax dolls were famously these ones here. They were famously used to try and kill Ramses III. They were trying to curse him, and I think it's actually her. And apparently these wax dolls would bring death to anyone who gave birth to a child that looked like one of these dolls.
It's very similar to the British dolls that I was saying last time.
That's crazy. I've never even heard of this until I was researching.
That's new to me. I've never heard of anything like that before.
They're known. The word Shabti actually means stick in Egyptian, but it also corresponds to the word for answer. So the Shabtis were known as the answerers. So they would answer your duties in the afterlife, which I mean, I've of course we've done Egyptian history in school and that, but at no point have they ever mentioned this at all.
Just go show how far back actually dolls can go.
Yeah. You know what it kind of reminds me of is that although I've never heard of these kind of dolls before, the way how they are said to answer back, in the afterlife or, do the type of bidding that you want them to do. There's a similar story, and I'm sure we've all heard of this one that I could really kind of relate to is the story of the Golem, because they use, which is more of a statue, but it has a similar, kind of story to it. I think it's on the I can't remember where that story came from. I think it was somewhere from Europe, if I'm correct on that. But it's very similar to what these Shabti dolls are.
Oh, okay, yeah. I haven't heard of that personally myself, but
what's he called? Golem doll.
Yeah, Golem. Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually. Oh, it's from. Excuse me. That's actually from Jewish folklore. I just looked it up. So it's an animated anthropomorphic being that is created entirely from inanimate matter, usually clay or mud. The word was used to mean an amorphous, unformed material in Islam's and medieval writing. And the most famous Golem narrative involves Judah Lo Ben. I don't know how to say his last name. I know I have trouble sometimes with last names. He was a late 16th century rabbi of Prague. Many tales differ on how the Golem was brought to life and afterward control. According to Moment magazine, the Golem is a highly mutable metaphor with seemingly limitless symbolism. It can be a victim or villain, Jew or non-Jew, man or woman, or sometimes both. Over the centuries, it has been used to connote war, community, isolation, hope, and despair. And there's been movies made of it. I think the earliest movie, in fact, that was based on the story was, of course, during the silent era. Was in fact, it was now almost 100 years ago. There was a movie that was just called The Golem that was made back in exactly 100 years, made back in 1920. So that goes to show again how long, considering that the real legend dates back to the 16th century, but movies of the stories have been around for 100 years.
Yeah, that's insane. I've never heard of the Golem ones. Again, these Shabti ones. It just shows. I think that there's probably even more out there that we don't even know about. That the doll. I think a doll, as such, in its general term, has been used throughout the whole history of mankind. I think for paranormal beliefs, rituals, following you to the afterlife. It's a huge thing in human history.
It links a lot to voodooism and that.
Voodooism does it, and voodooism is, that is as old as mankind as it is.
It's big.
That's been around since, the beginning of mankind almost. And there's got to be a lot in it.
It dates back to the at least late early 1700s, but it's probably gone back even further. And
definitely. We're only scraping the surface here with actually how many of these different religions and beliefs use dolls. It's crazy.
Just like I just mentioned about the Golem, that's associated with Jewish culture.
Yeah. Judaism. That's one of the oldest religions. I believe alongside. I can't remember. I'm too ill to remember that, but it is a very old religion. So it will go back, like say the Golems. It will go back hundreds of thousands of years.
Yeah.
Right.
Have you ever heard of Letter the Haunted Doll?
Oh boy, that picture does look a little bit familiar. I'm trying to think of, because I did see something like that previously. I don't know if that was the exact same picture, but maybe as we continue this, maybe it'll come back to me. I can't remember right now, but it does look a little familiar.
Yeah.
Letter the Doll, also known as Letter Me Out, is truly one of the scariest looking haunted dolls out there. The child-sized figurine is said to be around 200 years old and is made of wood and real human hair. The doll's owner,
saying last week,
Kerry Walton, claims to have found Letter in the 1970s while exploring a deserted home in Wagga Wagga, Australia. Walton's children complained nightmares one night. They woke up screaming that Letter was talking and moving around on its own. Dogs turned aggressive whenever they were near the doll, while guests claimed to see the doll move. At some point, Walton tried to sell off Letter, only to find that he physically couldn't get him out of the car.
Wow. Jeez.
Like you saying, Nick, about the hair thing. That's crazy.
Yeah, upon hearing that, I don't think I've heard of that story either. That's like, because again, I thought maybe the picture was familiar, but I definitely do not remember the story. So that's, wow, that's incredible.
200 years old as well. That's
200.
They claim that's
well, not to mention it was made out of wood. Like, you don't come across a lot of dolls made out of wood.
No, you don't. No. Walton asserts Letter's origins trace back to Eastern Europe. He believes the doll is a vessel haunted by a spirit of a boy who drowned many years ago. Currently tours around Australia with Walton sitting on the laps of those who are brave enough to take a picture with the grinning figurine.
I mean, it looks creepy as it is, but I mean, if the story is true that this doll is inhabited by a child that drowned, potentially the hair of the doll could be the hair from that child, and maybe the relatives of that child were trying to almost keep his spirit alive, and by doing that, I reckon they've almost inadvertently trapped his spirit with that doll.
I don't agree with it, if I'm honest. They should have their own freedom to, if they want to be with that kind of doll, then they should be able to. But to put your own essence in something is almost, in a way, it's a bit intrusive.
Yeah. I will say this: he does have a rather unsettling appearance. That's for sure.
And I do find it's strange that a lot of these haunted dolls do have a scary appearance. They don't look nice. I mean, our ones behind us, they look like normal dolls, but a lot of these fake dolls are very hideous. Yeah, she's a bit creepy in the video, Claudia. She's got that look about her.
I think she's seen better days, bless her.
Maybe it's because a lot of these older dolls were the artistry wasn't as good in them, but
I
mean, I don't know. I mean, it does always seem to be that they are always freaky looking.
Well, if you look at it, I just thought of this. This was something I wanted to bring up last week. I'm glad I have it in my head now. But, another kind of doll that exists that, you don't really hear too many stories about, but they certainly have a rather, again, unsettling, creepy appearances. Dolls from the Amish community. Like, their dolls that they have no faces to them. They're just blank. Like, and I was trying to figure out, why on earth do they have no faces? And I thought, that's just part of the Amish culture. I think they say they'd rather not want to have a facial expression, like showing an expression of what the doll would feel like, or if it represented somebody that either they knew that was not part of the Amish community. I think there's a couple of these different reasons why, but regardless, I think those dolls are even creepier having no face at all.
Yeah, Yeah,
and these kids play with them. It's like they don't even see it as a problem. It doesn't phase them. It doesn't bother them. It's just like they just treat it like a normal toy.
They're very much about looking after their own people and the environment that they live in. No technology.
Yeah.
They don't agree with like makeup and
don't even have mirrors or anything, do they?
no.
And I suppose, but then them having that isolated community, and like for us, I think because of our cultures and the films and stuff, it's almost been ingrained in us that a doll without a face is freaky. Like it's
or a doll's eyes that can move.
Yeah, that it's made. Our culture's made them freaky, but like you said, for them, for the children there, that's just normality. It's just a doll. It doesn't bother them at all. It's fine.
It's just normal to them.
And I think that's what you've got to bear in mind as well whenever working with dolls and stuff, that they like you've got to take away your own prejudices and the things that have affected you in your life, the films and stuff. Remove all that and almost have like a blank canvas that it's just a doll, and then work there. Do you know what I mean? And it's a shame that it's like we said about Doll Island earlier. A lot of the TV shows and documentaries since then have deliberately made it like it's a devil island. It's haunted by demons.
And it's almost fact.
But and they've always thrown that to be. That's what it is. But its original intentions were generally just as a memorial to this little girl. It's meant to be beautiful.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
It also should be noted, like, you know, again with the Amish dolls, is that they probably the other reason why they don't add faces to them, I just thought of this too, was because you have to remember a lot of the materials that the Amish have are mainly custom made. Like a lot of them are made by hand. So for a lot of these dolls that they make with no faces, perhaps another reason why they don't add faces to them is it's probably a lot more difficult to add faces to them because you got to put the eyes in, you got to, or try to put the right expression. So I think, I mean, that's again another guess. That's probably one of the other reasons, but that's probably another reason why they don't add faces is because it's just too difficult to add the faces in.
Yeah, true. Yeah, that's a good point. Very good point. Yeah.
Or they were having a lazy day and couldn't be bothered and thought that'll do.
You've got your face. Right, I've got time for one more then.
Yeah, last one. Have you heard of Mandy the Haunted Doll?
Oh yeah, I've heard a couple things about Mandy. Yes.
Oh, okay. So what I've read, I've only recently read. I didn't even know about this doll. The pieces that I've read about here is that she was possessed by a young girl wanting attention. That is what a medium got out of it. She was found in a basement by the original owner. She found it because she kept on hearing baby crying in her basement. Obviously, there was no baby in the house at the time. She assumed it was this doll. The person that donated it to the museum is anonymous. Like, she didn't want anything to do with it. She wanted the doll gone. And apparently, she said that since the doll's gone, all activity has stopped. Now, since it's been at the museum, nothing sinister has happened. I mean, you look at the image of her, and she does look very sinister. And the film, there's a film called Mandy the Doll.
I was just looking it up. There's a movie called Mandy the Haunted Doll. It came out 2 years ago.
Apparently, she's done nothing sinister. She's never done anything sinister. The most she's done at the moment in this museum, she hides people's lunches. She moves stationery and books. I mean, the worst thing you could probably say is that when she was near other dolls, at night, the other dolls will be found pushed off the shelves on the floor.
She knocks them off.
But apparently, and that is as far as she goes through actually being negative.
Yeah. They also say staff say that she has to be kept in a separate display case.
Yeah, she's now separate. I mean, I don't know what else you've heard about her, Nick.
Yeah, I've heard about the pushing doll, phenomenon too. Which to me, I think that's just kind of if that is truly her. I mean, if it is considered negative, that's really more of kind of what I would call more of like jealousy attacks. It's basically obviously shown that this doll does not like having other dolls in the same room or under the same roof as it does. It's like
Yeah.
almost as if it's more like protecting its territory in a way. It does not want to have. You know, I guess in some way it's also preventing it. You know, trying to find a way to prevent itself from, you know, these dolls getting more attention than she does. And that's the thing too, is like you said, I've never really heard of anything negative involving Mandy, and that's the other thing too. I feel bad for some of these dolls, is that again, it's like you said, Tom. You know, these, you know, the movies, the TV shows, some of these, you know, paranormal documentaries. Not all of them, but some of them. You know, kind of give these dolls rather a bad name, that if they're possessed, they're evil, they want to hurt, they want to kill someone. That's not always the case. You know, yes, they do. A lot of them have a creepy appearance, but that doesn't mean every single one that's supposedly haunted is a negative entity. So the fact that this is rather, again, while it does, this Mandy has a unsettling appearance to it, it does not seem to have any type of, you know, maniacal tendencies, wanting to hurt anybody, other than pushing these other dolls out of the off the shelf or wherever they're at.
Yeah, definitely.
Said it was manufactured in 1910, so it's old.
It's not a doll,
it's got
yeah.
some history.
And it's unfortunate. I haven't seen the movie personally, but I briefly looked at what the overview was, and it, like you say, Nick, it does give them a very bad name, and it's wrong almost. It's almost disrespecting the actual doll, because all the evidence does point towards this doll is possessed by a young girl that just generally wants attention.
It's crying, you know.
Yeah, she just wants to be loved, and to put this negative image on that doll, it's a shame, really. It is a shame.
Yeah,
it is, because, you know, it's like, it's how can I really describe it? It's like, for some people out there, it's like they just don't understand that, you know, and this is something I've told to a lot of people, especially new paranormal recruits. It's not even just about dolls. It's about the entire subject, that, you know, they think that, you know, everything that they're going to be encountering is going to be demonic, it's going to be evil. And then there's other people out there who are thrill seekers saying, oh, I'm going to be going to, you know, this location or check out this possession. I'm going to have a lot of fun, excitement, danger. It's not really the case at all. You know, first off, it's not as like what you see in the movies and TV shows. We actually did do something like that years ago with a Boy Scout group, not with dolls, but at a location. And one of the kids was really scared, and we told him, you know, he eventually calmed down, but, you know, we told him it's what you see in the movies and television shows is much scarier than what you experience in real life. You know, it's not as intense. And, you know, but in the case with dolls, it's like, I don't know, really, honestly. Like, you see all these, again, movies and TV shows, and they just give them a much more sinister look, when while a few of them, like, let's say Robert or Annabelle, are negative, there's many others out there that just don't have that same negativity.
Oh, definitely not.
Yeah.
It's like what we've seen of our last 7 that we've got here, that we've never had really any negativity off them at all. I mean, yeah, maybe Claudia made Amy feel ill.
I've not felt ill since.
But
so.
yeah, but we haven't tried on our reasons. But I mean,
need to.
The most we have is we've had like positive things from them. I mean, the little boys, when they come through and say "mama" and stuff like that, there's never been anything negative at all. And there was
there was a doll that supposedly we went to this location years later. Unfortunately, I don't know if this was the same location or not, but it was a location called Sedansville Rectory, which is located near Cincinnati, Ohio. And unfortunately, they're no longer doing investigations because the owner doesn't have the place anymore. But I remember years ago, I guess supposedly, I don't know if it was this location or if it was a different one, but supposedly that there was a doll that once resided either in this rectory or, again, wherever location this was. And I mean, I know it's partially off topic, but the Sedansville Rectory, when it was actually operating as a rectory back in its days, it wasn't really just like a normal rectory where priests live. It was actually where, as they would say, the bad priests would go, like the child molesters, those kind of people. You know, it was more of like a halfway house than an actual rectory. It served as kind of both in a way. But
Yeah.
supposedly there was a doll that once resided at this location, and they said that this doll apparently contained the spirit of a 7 or 8-year-old girl who was unfortunately raped and murdered. I don't know if it was here. If it was there at the rectory or if it was in a different location, but supposedly her spirit was residing in this doll. It was a couple of years ago I was told this, but I think they say they hear her crying, sometimes laughing. But again, just because this doll is supposedly laughing or crying, it doesn't mean that it's a negative entity. As I just told you, this poor kid was, brutally murdered, by God knows what. However she died, that's not to say that she's going to be a negative entity after life. Whoever killed her obviously was.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
What I would suggest to people is go and do research about haunted dolls. There is so many out there. We've only touched on like hardly anything, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, we've brushed the surface. But I think the more research you do, the better it is, because you have more understanding for these things.
And you don't just see them in a negative light.
I mean, look at us before we bought any dolls, we had that negative mindset of it's a haunted doll, oh my god. But then since doing this and having them, it's like it's not that bad. Like you say, Nick,
as long as you've got respect for them.
Movies and stuff, that is far worse than what anybody will ever encounter.
Yeah,
definitely. But yeah, so we have run a little bit over, but
it's been a good chat though.
Hi,
absolutely.
Been excellent. Next week, I haven't even thought about next week. I've been that busy.
I think we're going to do aliens.
We're going to do aliens, are we?
Yeah, so we're going to look at aliens.
We're going to look at aliens next week.
Oh boy.
Massive topic, that one.
Huge topic, aliens. So it's the last one before Christmas, obviously, because we will not be doing one, obviously, because it's going to be Christmas Day, the Friday. But we will be doing one next week before the Christmas break. So guys, if anyone's missed this or is watching this now, please join us next week again, Friday, 8 o'clock UK time. And yeah, thanks for watching, and of course thank you very much for Nick for joining us. It's been excellent.
Absolutely, my pleasure.